This is the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast with Greg Smith and Jay Foreman. Tell it to me straight up.
Hello, welcome into the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast, proudly part of the Hurrdat Media Network. I am Greg Smith. This is actually my Super Bowl week because of early National Signing Day, and I have a lot of stuff to do, friend.
This is Jay Foreman, your painting the ugly pig self in full effect today. It's maybe no holds barred Monday.
It's going to be an interesting show. I can already tell off the top just on the conversation beforehand. I mean, by this point, you know, Nebraska lost to Minnesota 24-17 in what can only be described as, I mean, at best, a disappointing loss. You could say, and I know my colleague Derek Peterson actually wrote a really good column on Sunday about, he started off by posing the question of, was this a bad loss or was it just everything else combined into it? And I encourage you to go read that at hillvarsity.com. You did a really nice job of laying out how we got here and what kind of all went into this. So definitely go and check that out, his Sunday column. But we're going to have to dive into this, like the good, bad, and the ugly, because I actually think that, and I feel like we said this after the Illinois loss, that to me, this has stopped being, the issues that Nebraska football have stopped being about X's and O's necessarily. Now, there is some of that for sure. And I think it's definitely stopped being about talent. Like I have no patience at this point for having the talent discussion about like, hey, Nebraska doesn't have enough players, right. Because I just don't believe that to be the case. I just really don't. And recruiting is my thing, so we really wanted to go into it. We could go into how Nebraska has out-recruited everybody in the Big Ten West for what seems like 10 years, right. But then continues to lose at a clip that kind of defies logic, just based on recruiting rankings, right? But I want to start with something that I feel like, and I was talking to Sasha about this before the show, who's producing us again today, thankfully. When we were talking about something that Barrett Ruud said.
Coach, speak to real talk.
When he first got to Nebraska's inside linebacker coach, obviously the school's leading tackler in history. He said this to us, I think it may have been the very first time we talked to him, about he tries to preach to guys to fall back on your habits, right? And that has been rolling around in my head because the thing that comes off of that to me, see, you know where I'm going, is I'm not sure at this point when things get tough for Nebraska football, like what those habits are. I don't know what they're trying to fall back on. And there's all sorts of like flowery ways to describe that, right? Like like the egg theory, you know, when you get squeezed, what comes out of you, the going gets tough, all of that stuff. Right. So like when the pressure is on, what do you fall back on? And I think that is something very big picture that Nebraska has had issues with now for years. And I want to give you, I'm going to pull the curtain back on myself personally and give you a real example of how I kind of relate to that kind of theory and what's going on, right? So for the last 3 years, and Jay knows this, Sasha knows this, we've talked about this a bunch. For the last 3 years, I've been kind of undergoing this transformation, weight loss, kind of get my body right, all of that, right? Right. And so
you're doing a great job, by the way.
Thank you very much. The workouts, okay, are actually the games, right? Those are the things that you see on Saturday, the things that everybody wants to talk about. I post about it sometimes on Instagram. People are like, oh, yeah, look at you, right? Love my Peloton. The things that get you to that point, though, are actually all the stuff that you don't talk about that happens outside of that hour and a half, whatever, for a workout versus a game 3 hours, right? So to really make it personal, I have certain things that I try to do every single day. They are non-negotiables. I try to do it Monday through Friday. I wake up at 4:45. I work out between 5:30 and 6. I do my workout. I do my stretching. I then try to drink 100 ounces of water before noon. I then try to eat healthy throughout the day. I'm in bed by 9:30, 10. Jay knows this. You will text me at 10:30. I do not respond because I'm asleep.
Until 4:53.
And I did it this morning. I texted you at 4:53, right? But that's the boring shit, right? Nobody talks about that. Right. That's the stuff that you do when we're Monday through Friday at practice, the stuff that nobody's hearing about. So then it doesn't matter what's happening in the outside world, whether or not things are going well in my life, things are going poorly, I'm busy like I am this week, even the pandemic. Now, we had our little struggles through that, right? And that went sideways, but it was a short-lived thing because what did I do? I fell back on those habits that I always do. Right. what is that for Nebraska football right now? Like, and that happens to you listening in your everyday life. You have those things that you want to be able to do so that you can live the way that you want to live, or that you can perform at work the way you want to perform. We don't know what that is for Nebraska. And that is a big problem.
We don't know, and I'm not sure they know. I think
Which is an even bigger problem.
And I'm willing to bet if you asked 10 players, right, what is the identity, if you got them out like 2 weeks after the season, because you can kind of hear the same thing, and they'll, when you can kind of push play and it's like the same thing coming from 2 weeks after the season, you have 10 guys, that question, I guarantee you get about 5 different answers.
Right.
And I guarantee you if you ask them when things get hairy or things get tough or intense, what do you fall back on? Most likely people will like to say, look, we're going to fall back on what we do well, fundamentals, be a physical type of team, ABC play, ABC defense. Then we're going to get back to execution. This is what we can lean on.
And you saw that this weekend with Minnesota, and this is why it's such a good example for this specific time, because it came up right after the Minnesota game again, where Minnesota down 33 players, while also, and I don't think this has been talked about enough, like for most of that game was missing their best player that was suited up, right? The running back, who's very, very good. And you have warned me about him coming into that game. But he's missing for a good chunk of that game. But even with him out, then when he comes back in, Minnesota knows who they are. So when things get tough and they are down 33 guys, they haven't played in a few weeks, they're on the road, the conditions aren't all that great, right? Like they knew exactly what they were going to come in here and do in Lincoln this weekend.
Right. This game was no different than what happened up in Minneapolis last year, except for the 2 pro receivers weren't there and they weren't as explosive.
Right.
But they got explosive by destroying us on the offensive line versus our defensive line and the physical at the point of attack. They came down here and punked us again.
I almost think so. In a way,
they punked us.
In a way,
it's fine.
Worse. Like I was gonna say, it's worse to me the way that the game unfolded this weekend. And see, this is where also the problem kind of comes in, and it's also been rolling around in my head, that like the dangers of Nebraska being quote unquote close, because you can convince yourself that close. You lost by 7 points again this weekend, the 12th one-score loss under Scott Frost. You can convince yourself that, okay, the game was close, it really wasn't that bad. There is a real danger in that happening with Nebraska football right now, because you get to the point to where you say, we're close so often that does that then make you think that you, as Scott Frost, think that you should not take a hard look at a lot of things within the program that need to be fixed? Or do you then think that you just need an additional break? Right, because there's something broken with that process.
What you're doing is you're waiting for 4 teams in a season to give you a game. We're just pretty much morphing into coach speak.
Right. And coach speak was actually just going to be something about the offense, and them talking about
you sliding in, right? You slide into the DMs and sliding in the homepage. We just slid right into coach speak.
We did.
So what you're doing is asking and hoping and waiting for everybody else to make the mistake during these games, in those one score games. Yep. That's what you're doing. So instead of handling your business, looking at yourself, that how can we not even be in those games against teams we shouldn't, especially when you have the roster advantage, you got the time in the, when you've been playing, right? Mm-hmm. The team hasn't played for 2 weeks, so there's going to be rust there, right?
Right, which is also crazy. They did not look rusty, because I think Nebraska just didn't force the issue on them. That's a game plan thing
right? So you had everything stacked up in your way to, I wouldn't say it'd be an easy victory, but a thing if you go out there and handle your business, because we talked about it before. As long as they go out there and handle it, we talked about this.
We talked about it beforehand. It's about them. Like, it's about Nebraska taking care of what they needed to take care of.
Right. During the week and at the game, and then the game is kind of just like your payoff. So, you are essentially saying it to yourself, we're close. That's going to eliminate you from actually putting in the work. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the hard work, the grinding. That is also you not taking an honest evaluation of yourself and then making adjustments and changing and compromising or whatever you want to call it. And this is just everyday life, right?
Yeah, all of this stuff is
I'm close to whether you're trying to hit sales number and get to the the next bonus thing or whatever you're trying to do, mm-hmm. right? You're sitting there and then you're waiting for, okay, I'm sitting here waiting for somebody else to mess up. You just can't do that. Football is a game of preparation, purpose, want to, and action. You got to force the action. If you get the action back, you got to counter. You got to have a counterattack to that to even get back to what you really want to do. And we talked about it. Look, I can tell you what. Yes, Minnesota hadn't practiced for 2 weeks, but I can promise you, PJ Fleck, wherever he was at, he was in his office, at home. I don't know how they did their quarantine or whatever they had to do. I can guarantee he was watching tape. I guarantee you they had Nebraska circled on their calendar with the, projection of then that's when the next game that they would play. So they were game planning. They were trying to make it simple for these guys. They were trying to instill confidence with a short week of practice or short week of, not being fully prepared, knowing kind of, who was going to be available, who wasn't. Right? So I guarantee you he expressed this is a great opportunity for you getting experience, great opportunity to,
it's time for you to get your feet wet.
Time for you to get your feet wet. This is what could happen. This is where you could be. Look, hey, look, you could be in there and starting very shortly, right? And, he instilled the confidence in them that they physically could beat us. And they kept running the same play.
But see, that's the other thing about Minnesota.
Hold on. That's the funny thing about it. And when I coach – we play a team in basketball that used to be one of our rivals, and you could say they still are. When I first started coaching, they these were the kids from Elkhorn South. They had hoops in their house, and they ran us off the court. Well, we caught up to them, and we run this play coming right out the get-go. The point guard says the play. I say the play. We've beat them 6 times in a row. Every single play coming out of the first play of the game and halftime, we ran that same play, and we scored every single time, right? So that lets you know that they're not preparing for that play. Now, that doesn't lead to a win. How do you continue to let these dudes run to the defense's left and to the short side of the field for astronomical amounts of yards? If you took that play alone
right,
from last year's game and this year's game, they're almost like Heisman numbers here. Yeah. I mean, the dude came off the bench, cold as a cucumber, and hit you up for 61 off the bench to a play, and it was wide open. Okay, and I don't know who number 70 is on Minnesota. I know he wasn't the starter when I watched the game against Michigan. Right. So maybe he was dealing with COVID then, and he's a starter. But I'm gonna tell you what now. If he gets drafted, I guarantee you that tape is going to be on.
Right.
Because he was throwing, I'm not going to say no names or nothing. He was throwing a senior out of the club with a fake ID. Like he was trying to get in iguanas or whatever. Like they literally were taking here's what I picture it for you people out there listening. He was taking them by the back of his jeans and in the back of his collar of his shirt, lifting him out there and throwing him out the club. That was I didn't, and especially on senior day, and I know the fans aren't there, but at the end of the day, you guys have been through. They've been through a lot, right? They've been through the grind, and they've made it. And there is something to be said to you start something and you finish it, right? And I'm giving tons of credit for that. But at the end of the day, this is the last time that you might be playing. Now I know they say, "Oh yeah, we want them all back," but in reality, there's going to be some hard conversations either being had or have to be had.
And I think because of the way that this is ending, some conversations from the player side of, hey, do I want to still be doing this, man?
Right.
Like,
how much do you really love football?
Yeah, you're going to have some.
How much do you really want to think? But this is also the thing about it, about these coaches now these days and the players from high school on up. Sports is so hard because you have to give it everything that you have from a mental standpoint and a physical standpoint to prepare for a game, and there's no guarantee that you're going to win.
Right.
All it's guaranteeing you is giving yourself the best chance to win. Mm-hmm. That's Nebraska's problem. That's it right there. They are not giving themselves a best chance to win from a strategic standpoint, execution standpoint, work standpoint, and a mentality standpoint. Those 4 things right there, what you have to be able to be on point before you can even worry about, is this lineman going to come across this line and knock my head off?
Right.
And then where do I got to go? Do I got to cover the running back, or I got to cover the crossing receiver? All that stuff is all that stuff that I mentioned that you have to do Monday through Friday is going to allow you to play. So when I watch a game and I see a team that's in a lot of ways uninspired, I'm talking about overall. Now those guys I think that have played inspired. I think Wandale, JoJo, and all them.
Yeah, some of those guys. Yeah, you can tell
played inspired. Overall though, the temperature of the team. it's like they aren't like always running at 100 degrees.
But it's a total, you know how you can tell that though? Remember how, and it's funny how excited we was that 2 weeks ago now for the Iowa game when they came out, Luke Reimer had that personal foul, right? And we were talking about that being a tone setter, right? And how hot they were running to start that game. It was really them saying, and Luke Reimer saying, we're going to be here all day. They had that same kind of fire because they started off hot against Purdue and then it got rolling against them. And then Nebraska was able to keep that going and hold on to win. Did they have that? Was that same level of intensity that was there for the Iowa game? Did you see that for the Minnesota game, or did the Minnesota game look closer to the Illinois game, right?
Minnesota game was a less bludgeoning of the Illinois game.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as that, but it was closer to that game mentality-wise than it was the Iowa game, which again comes back to the little things that happen leading up to these games. There's something wrong in that process. Like whether or not it's, and then see, this is where this gets rolled into this too, because Scott said it again after the game about we had a great week of practice.
Sure.
Right.
I look great on the driving range.
Right.
And I don't got no money on the line.
Yeah. So
you know what I'm saying, Sasha? When I got paid for 6 guys' lunch, I'm Tiger Woo out there. I ain't Tiger Woods. I'm Tiger Woo. I'm the new version.
Right. But see, here's the thing, and this is something that, and you and I, Jay, have talked about this before, though, right? And I don't know if we talked about it here. When Scott Frost says that, though, are they actually having good weeks of practice? Or have they gone from when he first got here an F level at practice to now like a C minus or a D? And do the players know? And this is not, I'm not trying to take shots at the players, but do the players know what an A level of practice and preparation looks like? Because the evidence is that they don't know what that looks like.
Do you know what the game is? You know what happens on Saturdays? All you do is show however many people. There's either 1 or 100,000 people, 100 or 100,000 people in there. You're just showing them how you practice. That's it. That's why I don't believe in gamers, man. I don't believe in going in and giving half effort and, everybody's going left and you going right all the week. And then, so, you know what, here we go. We're in a high pressure situation. And you know what, I'm going to turn it. I'm all of a sudden going to execute at 95%.
Right.
Saturdays is what you show what you've done Monday through Friday, period, point blank. Every single coach would tell you, Urban Meyer would tell you, Nick Saban would tell you. You could probably dig up Vince Lombardi. He would tell you some way, right? Okay, that's the truth. Yeah. So I also think, now I'm gonna give you my opinion on this practice. I think, and I've thought this even before Scott got here, kids these days come to practice to get through practice and not get better. Now, whether you're allowing it or they're getting away with it or they're finding ways to fake it, it's hard to decipher between the two. Right. It is. Because I know when I turn on an Alabama tape, when I turn on a Clemson tape, when I turn on a Georgia tape, when I turn on Ohio State tape, some other teams that I've, have an affinity for or whatever, I know I could tell you I can tell you exactly how their practices are. When I watch Iowa, I know how they practice. Right. When I saw number 31 dive and make that play at the end of the game, kind of to ice it against Wisconsin, I know he's done that in practice. I know he finishes in practice. He finishes, which allows him to, when Saturday night comes or whenever you're playing, to finish in the game.
Right. It's just a habit.
Right. So now I'm going to go back to this Iowa game, the Purdue game, the Minnesota game, and how it all started from the Illinois game. Right, because I was wanting to see how you can handle. First, you're going to see how you handle success after the Penn State game, and then also handle a full-fledged loss and an embarrassment.
Right.
Sometimes here's what with athletes out here, and this is when you're kind of going through the motions. Sometimes they'll go out and do something that they actually don't want to do, just not to face the embarrassment. So they got embarrassed, right? So they unwillingly, but through their actions, went out there and played tough against Iowa because they felt like they had to. They know they did wrong, but they did it for a week, so they felt like they rectified the problem.
Right.
Then it was just dumb luck, and we talked about teams giving you stuff, right? Purdue comes out and spots you 14, so it's easier to play as a front runner.
Right.
Right. It's like in basketball. You come on, they miss 3 layups, you hit 3 threes. Next thing you start the game 12-0. Hey, dude, look, everybody's up off the bench, right?
Right, everybody's fired up, damn.
Just like when Michael Jordan says, hey, look, everybody can talk junk when you're up 5-0. Let's see what happens when we get down to, crunch time, right? So that's easier. Now, you kind of gotten away with it 2 weeks, right? A lot of people thought Iowa was a win. We gave away that game. They played tough and physical that game, right? Mm-hmm. Played hard, okay? Purdue was kind of like, smoke screens. They played hard, but they played with the lead, front runners, right? Mm-hmm. And here comes Minnesota. We have to deal with success, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe you've gotten away with it 2 weeks and kind of massaged it and kind of like, kind of smoke and mirrors your way through that you're actually doing the things that we talk about you have to do in order the week. But then reality set in again on Saturday, right? That's the reality. Saturday showed me where you're at right now.
But see,
it showed me how you practice. It showed me your mentality. It showed me whether you're soft. It showed me whether you felt like you're entitled. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And it showed you whether you're faking it. Right now, Nebraska, the players are posers. Okay? I used to ride skateboard and stuff. I used to love skate with Tony Hawk and all these dudes, right? Yeah. But I was a hooper. You know what I mean? But then, I used to always go to the skate park. But then you knew these kids that would come from, like, the rich side of town, have every new skateboard. The trucks never had any scraping on it. They didn't know how to change the ball bearings in their wheels or anything like that, right? They're paying $5 to get it all clean, right? But they ain't know how to grind. We're posers right now. We're posing as a football. We got big arms, okay? We got big, like, you see them dudes come out there. They got some big, the gun shows going on, right? They strong, but they don't play strong. They don't have any second win, any second gear.
But see, I think that what you're laying out, though, actually leads perfectly to something else I wanted to talk about, which is
let's break that down.
Does Nebraska know who it wants to be, though? And there's another thing that goes into when we talk about falling back on your habits. It's all the same thing, just a different way to say it. But if does Nebraska want to be the kid that you just described that pays $5 that has to get their stuff clean, comes from the rich side of town, has all of the really nice stuff. You've got the great locker room and you've got, the red carpet rolled out for the tunnel walk and all of that stuff. Like, are you wanting to be that type of program, or are you wanting to be the bring your lunch pail? We walked in with a sledgehammer or with a shield, as PJ Fleck of Minnesota actually did this weekend. And people laughed at it, but they've instilled some sort of toughness in that football team that it goes beyond, like, people use those kind of props, but it actually means something to those programs, right? Mm-hmm. And you know how you also see that kind of conflict of identity crisis with Nebraska football? It's not just about the players. That actually starts with Scott Frost. And how I can really easily lay this out for you is, if you think about, was this now 3 years ago, right, when Scott took the job for Nebraska and he was at the College Football Awards in the nice gray fitted suit, had the Yeezys on, and we were like, oh, Nebraska's getting the cool coach, right? Like, he's going to be the guy that comes in with this high-flying offense, and he can relate to players. He's the young guy. He's cool, right? But then he gets to Nebraska, and at Nebraska, it's camo hats with the dip in, and I just want to be the good old boy. Nothing wrong with either one, but which one do you want to be, and which version of that then trickles down to your program? Because you see that same identity crisis and conflict in how they play. So when you play against Minnesota, and Minnesota has the 110th ranked rushing defense in the country, and what do? You got to show people that your offense works, so you come out throwing the ball side to side. It goes sideways, literally, again, instead of just coming out and being what you said you wanted to be in the offseason with Greg Austin when you talked all the stuff about how you wanted to be a downhill running team, right? You wanted to be physical. So which version, like, what do they want to be? And more importantly, does Scott Frost know?
I think he knows. I think he has an idea. I think the problem – I mean, that's a good analogy. I never really thought about it like that. I mean, I'm not a big Adidas guy or Yeezy because of Kanye. So I never liked Kanye anyways. But I never really thought about it like that. But I look at it like, I think he knows what. I think he has an idea. Like, if he came in here and got on the whiteboard or whatever, he could say, I want to be A, B, C, and D, or A and B, or whatever it is that describe it. He could do it like that. I know for a fact he could. I think the biggest problem now is the mix and continuity of how fast he get there and how fast he's willing to make them get there. That's where I think it's not meshing, right? And then also I think he was extremely blessed the first year to have kind of fell into Divine. I mean, people forget the offense was kind of sputtering until Divine got in there.
Right, and that's really the only example of these 3 years that we have of consistent running back play. But remember that it even took games to get there.
It took 4 games
to actually give him the ball.
Because it was Greg Bell, then it was Maurice Washington, and then a couple other guys. And all right, Divine, we had a ton of injuries, remember? And he got in and started.
He was so good.
And then the offense just took off, right? So, I think, there's been personnel, where you got to, I wouldn't say there have been misses, but the hits, where you're thinking that a guy is going to either become a home run hitter, is still at being a single hitter. And I'm not just talking about Adrian. I'm talking about some of the offensive line guys. I'm talking about the receivers, some guys on defense. So when that happens, you always expect your best players, the guys that you think you're going to be your best players, to play the best. That hasn't been the most consistent. That hasn't happened. So what that does is, as a coach, and you got to think as a coach, if he's watching, and look, they might be executing in practice. So he's expecting, because Scott's been there before as a player and as a coach, and he's seen it at pro level, college level, and then he did it himself at pro and college level. So if he's a coach and he's out there looking and he's seeing stuff that, guys execute these basic plays, every week in practice, you're expecting it. Then when you can't get guys to line up right in base offense for them, right? Can't even stay on sides the first play of the game, or get a holding first play of the game, right? Can't stay on sides, right? Coming out of a timeout or whatever, TV timeout or whatever you want to call it. I'm referencing back like Ohio State and other games. So now it takes your playbook from a full sheet to, I don't know what we can run because we can't even run play number 1 in a script. Right. And I think it's kind of like damaged your, I guess I wouldn't say your mentality, but what you see. I mean, when you've seen it so much, you're expecting it. So when you're calling the plays, you never can get in a full-fledged rhythm, because we haven't seen 2 weeks in a row that these guys can actually go out there and execute just the basics.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about, inside outside zone was supposed to be their thing, right?
Yes.
Right.
And it is.
But but you can't run inside. For you people out there, you can't run inside outside zone, stretch inside outside zone with the cutback, because we're losing at the point of attack and we're losing backside.
Right.
And people don't don't understand as Divine was so good that he made an average offensive line look a lot better. A lot of his plays were cut backside, because he was able to read the bad blocks, on the backside and kind of make those guys right. We don't have that right now, right? If you look at Divine and you look at Mills, they're 2 different types of backs, and they're both physically look the same, but one's an NFL back, one's trying to be an NFL back and got more wiggle and better vision. So what is happening right now is, if there's a list of 5 things that aren't right, that will lead to this type of play. Usually teams might have 1 or 2. We got all 5.
Right. And I think that it starts with, and the staff has talked about this a lot, and this has continued to be a thing that's plagued them throughout these 3 years, and we started getting to the nitty-gritty of the execution during games, it's them not being able to hang their hat on anything.
Right.
Like, they don't know. And this is I can empathize with Frost and Austin and Matt Lubick on this in a way, because if you really do feel like, hey, when we're in practice, we are executing that swing pass. When we're in practice, we are executing our inside zone. And then we get out there in the game and it's just not happening. Like, that would be frustrating, right? And it is like nobody's calling a play for 3 guys to get blown up on the offensive line to then have, because you're just not going to be able to do anything with that. So I understand that. The problem, though, becomes is if that's happening consistently in year 1, it's one thing, right? We can say, okay, we've got to get this, and this, player-wise, or we've got to figure out how to really drill down on the details to get this fixed. But if you're having those same issues 3 years later, then that's when you really start to say, well, okay, everybody needs to look at themselves and say, why is this not getting fixed?
If every coach if he's not looking at himself first, and then every coach needs to be looking at themselves, and then take a whole landscape of our identity or whatever, our culture and all. I mean, everything. Even to the weight program. I mean, the weight program has been great, but you might have to change some stuff. And here's the biggest problem. I'm willing to bet if we watched Farniak 2 years ago or even last year and versus a play that I saw again when they played Purdue, that when he was the onside ball, the onside puller and the backside pullers beat him around the corner, I'm willing to bet you haven't seen that before.
All right.
There's no way if you're on ball side that the guy pulling from the other side of the line or other side of the center should beat you around the corner. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
So as a coach, you can't project that. Coach, here's the funny thing. They are not calling plays for them not to work.
Right. And
they are not calling defenses for them not to work. They are not calling a punt, directional punt, for them to punt to the sideline and it goes down the middle.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So there's also, the onus has to be on the players as well. And then also, look, and I'll say this, and I know everybody's kind of has been dealing with the same playing field as far as COVID. COVID hurt a team like Nebraska more than, say, Ohio State or somebody like that because we had all those 5. If there's 5 check marks that we needed to improve on, we had to do all 5. Like a team like, say, like Michigan State or something like that, when Mel Tucker gets there and they're up and down just because they're a new coaching staff, right. But you know that he's going to do it and do it his ways because he already kind of know what he's going to do. We're still trying to figure it out. And Michigan State's foundation was already there before he got there. Right. And regardless of how they struggled the year that their coach left, but they still had a foundation. You knew they were going to be physical. Right. You knew they were going to find a way to work itself out hard in the weight room. You know they're going to develop players, and you know they're going to have guys that are going to be able to play next level. Yeah,
they've seen what that looks like. Like there were players that were recruited by the previous coach at Michigan State that had seen what that work looks like.
For over 10 years.
Yeah, because it had been very consistent with what they were doing up at Michigan State. But it's just so – and part of this too is, and I think that it's funny, we started narrowed in and then we keep zooming out and we want to go to an even bigger picture issue for me. I was talking to Sasha about this too before the show, is that Sasha said on her show, Mind Your Own with Aaron Sorensen, great show, you should check it out, podcast, that her motto for 2020 is find a way, not an excuse. Nebraska football needs to adopt that motto.
Oh, yeah.
Now, and there are so many examples of this, and I don't even know. And at this point, it might be one of those things too, where Scott Frost may not even realize that he's doing this at this point. Right. But it happens every single week, where something that happened in that game becomes an excuse. This week, it was TV timeouts. Remember that? He said, he actually said in the post game that, they would get rhythm on offense, and then it just felt like every time they got the ball that there would be a TV timeout. Like, who's talking about that? A couple of weeks ago, he said that thing again about Mike Riley. And about how, we inherited this and that. Like, we were at that point.
Mike Riley.
Now I'm about to watch Bad Boys with Mike Lowry. That we were probably 30-some games in of the Scott Frost experience, and you're still referencing the previous coaching staff. In years past, it's been, our guys came out in hoodies when it was cold. We've blamed the schedule, Kevin Warren. The young players excuse has been out there. Like, there's almost a bingo card of these different excuses. And while some of them have varying levels of, validity to them, like you can say that playing 3 young offensive linemen right now, where you have 2 redshirt freshmen and a redshirt sophomore at center, who was a converted player, you can say that could lead to different issues on the offensive line. But I could also come back to you and say, find a way, not an excuse. Right. Because you also created part of that, by the way, when you moved Cam Jurgens to center. This is not to single him out necessarily, because I think when things are going well for Cam, things go really well. Things just tend to go sideways on him. But the issue that I'm getting to, though, about why it's such a problem that I can read you off an entire list of various excuses that Scott Frost has used, and I didn't even get to all of them, is because I wonder how that then seeps down into the rest of the team. Right. Yeah, because now it's not, and we talked about this earlier, now it becomes, instead of we've been in 12 one-score games that we've lost under Coach Frost, and, man, we just need to keep hammering, and we're going to bust through. I get the feeling that they just feel like they need a break. Scott Frost said it again this game against Minnesota. We started off poorly. We just didn't catch a break. It went against us. That tells me that something is bad mentally there, because those aren't the types of teams and people that then just find a way to bust through and figure it out, because you're always waiting for, like you said earlier in the show, for 4 teams in a season to give you a game.
Right, and that's not going to happen in the Big Ten.
That is not.
That's like I'm telling you.
No, it's not.
I'm telling you. No. You know, I know Logan Smith got canned, but if they got in that situation against Illinois going to close that game out. These coaches, I'm telling you, I don't know why people in Nebraska are refusing to see this. This is the 100% factual truth. Okay, this is the best league from top to bottom. I don't care about the records this year. I'm talking about the best coaches, the best players from top to bottom. Okay, and you got to go earn everything. It's the greatest opportunity. If I was a young high school kid, and it's also the hardest opportunity.
Right.
Because let me tell you something. I mean, granted, I would never give back my 3 national championships, right? Mm-hmm. But 60-70% of the time, I was watching in the second half because we were beating the brakes off of teams. You know what I'm saying? You get the opportunity to come in, if you're a starter, to play the whole game, like in high school.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like I'm here to play football. I love to play football. I want to run into people. I want to make plays. I want to make people happy in the stands, and I want to be happy, and I want to be happy when I get in the locker room. Right? They ain't going to give you nothing, man. This is just like life. You got to go out there, and there's going to be politics. There's going to be people hating on you. There's going to be people that say stuff about you that's not true, right? It's all happened to Scott Frost and them, right? Hating on him, people saying stuff about him that ain't true, saying he's not a good enough coach, not giving him the respect. How dare you want to play football, right? Hey, man. Look, you got to play through it. You know how many times, and granted, this is just youth basketball, but it's applicable, right, out there. That's the Ebonics version, right? For
yeah, I mean, you got there.
So, right, about 4 or 5 times.
You landed the plane. Right. You're kid.
To coach youth basketball. I mean, you know how many times that we have refs that can't see straight or just aren't very good? And I know the first thing the coach with refs are bad. Okay, look, if we play good enough, the refs don't matter.
Yeah.
You understand? You know why we lost? We didn't play good enough defense. We didn't rebound. We missed about 7, 8 layups, right? If we lose by 4 and we missed 10 layups, all we had to do was make 3 of them.
Right. It wouldn't have mattered if the ref missed those calls.
It wouldn't matter, right? And I tell them, look, some of these refs are just reffing for beer money. These aren't NBA refs, and you aren't NBA players. What we're doing is try to do, if we handle our business, we'll be just fine. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it really goes to the football team. If you play as hard as you can and execute and be a good teammate and go out there and give yourself to your other teammates, you'll win 80% of your games.
Yeah, you'll win.
This roster right now will win 80% of their games if they just did that. And I don't care if they ran the wing tee, the run and shoot offense, the spread, the double spread, the pistol, and all this other, and then ran a 5-2 defense, the 6'2" stack monster from Tom Cruise and all that other stuff, and 3-3. I don't care what if you just went out and did that, you would win 80% of your games.
It is something that I was thinking about this during that Minnesota game. It all boils down to, on that point, of just being able to do simple, right?
Walk and chew gum.
Like, think about that. If Nebraska, because that's the other thing. If we talk about the difference, like the real, like, brass tacks difference in these 1-score games, first of all, you wouldn't have so many of them if you could just execute simple things better. If you did not invent new ways to lose games, which has just been a weird, consistent thing for them. Really, it predates Frost. But if you could just execute simple.
Something happened down there.
But it's weird though. Somebody put some voodoo down there. They blame y'all, man. They say that it was your group. Your group.
How we blamed it?
Y'all took all the good juju, and then what happened is after that,
we left it there. We left the good juju.
That's what they say.
These new millennials and these new idea coaches that said, you know what, we have worked 20 years to say, you know what, that's what's worked for 60 years in Nebraska. We're going to slowly but surely chip away. Were we perfect by any means? Were we a law-abiding citizens at all times? No. But at the end of the day, we did more good than bad, and we won Nebraska the Nebraska way. And there's a team up there in Iowa City that's doing it like that. And I hate to say Madison is doing it. Minnesota came down here and did it. The Champaign, Illinois team came and did it. They do it down there with Tuscaloosa or wherever they are, right?
Tuscaloosa,
and then in Clemson, I mean, look, I could pass a geography class. You know,
I see you pointing out the map.
I'm pointing out the map, and, and I'm sure I'm missing a team. Okay? Heck, in South Bend, Indiana,
they do it.
They do it down there.
They definitely do it in South Bend, which is actually, I think, a really great comparison for what Nebraska could be. Because if you think about it, it just kind of came to me. If you think about Notre Dame and all of the kind of glitz and glamour of that program, and they're on NBC, they got the TV contract, like they have all the money, all of that stuff. But when you think about Notre Dame football,
they're hard-nosed.
Yeah, that's what you think of. You think of offensive line, and that's even with Brian Kelly came there as a coach as a spread offense.
Hold on now.
Came there.
So now let's also look at it back even before Brian Kelly. You got to think they had Charlie Weiss, they had Davey, Tyrone Willingham. Yeah. They had a lot of turnover in a quick, right?
Yeah.
It was like 3 years, 4 years. Charlie Weiss kind of did really good. Then they got him up out of there.
Yep.
What does that remind you of?
Nebraska.
Right. Then Brian Kelly came in, right? The new hot coach. Now he had more success out the gate.
He had done it longer.
He'd done it longer at Cincinnati, but he had more success out of the gate, primarily because Notre Dame plays about a bunch of cream puffs. You know, look, when you're playing like Air Force and all them, you're not playing Wisconsin and Iowa coming.
Yeah, so they're back-to-back weeks.
Weeks. So he record-wise, he came out the gate a little bit faster. But let's also, what did everybody say he had to do in order to get to where they are now? He's had to do 3 transformations twice. He had to change how he originally came in, change a little bit reluctantly to get him to when they played Alabama the first year.
Yep.
And got blown.
Just got destroyed. The Manti Te'o game.
Manti Te'o and Lacey, the running back that ate himself out the league. Yeah. He's still running.
Yep.
Okay. He's running to In-N-Out Burger, wherever he's at eating now, right?
Yeah.
And then he had to make another change. But it was he had to change personally how he dealt with people, right? And how he called games, how he recruited, and how he developed players, right? Then now you see the Quentin Nelsons, right? Jalen Smith. Hold on. You see the Jalen Smiths, right? Now you see the big tackle for the 49ers, he's number 69, McLaughlin or whatever his name is. Now you see, and then you saw a lot of the defensive players, the DBs and all that stuff, right? So now you're seeing the whole package. Now you're seeing them actually be able to beat established national championship type of program and coach in Clemson, right? And then continue along with success. After they have a big win, what do? Double down on it. When they're not playing well, what do? Step up and finish it, right? And have an ugly win to their standards. An ugly win to them is beating Pittsburgh by 18 points.
Right.
And pulling away. Defense, you step up. Offense, you make some sort of plays.
Right. Because we've done it before.
So there's a ton of parallels. It's right there, but it takes some self-evaluation. It takes people, and I always say like this, as a head coach, you're driving a big semi down Highway 80. Right? And you're right in the middle. So it's not like you're driving your car. You're right in the middle, right? So you need, like in this right here. So if I'm driving, I need you and Sasha to be my co-pilots, right? So your job is to look in the rearview mirrors and make sure, one, we're speeding, there's no police, right? And then you looking forward to make sure that we're not running off the road. And when we go through bumps, you guys, hey, Jay, man, there's a bump coming up right there. Okay, we didn't see that one, but we got to adjust how we're traveling across this country. That's essentially where you're at. You start on one side of the country and you're trying to get to the end, and the end is being a consistent national championship type of team. But there's going to be bumps and stuff along the road, but you got to have people there to check in your rearview mirrors. You have to, because you can't see everything.
Right.
You can't see everything as a human being. You can't see everything. That's why you have friends that you kind of bounce stuff off of, or you have a partner that tells you the hard truth, but you don't get so mad at them personally. You take it, regurgitate it, and 2 days later you say, you know what, man, you're right. Hey, can you help me out and do stuff?
Right.
There's nothing wrong in life, coaching, business, whatever it may be, asking for help. Because 9 times out of 10, if you come genuinely, they'll help you, right? And then also if you got to have people around you that's not going to always, I wouldn't say, and I hate when people like, or you see people say, oh, he has a bunch of yes men, but I don't believe that, right? You just want to have people around you. Ideally, you want people around you that are smarter than you.
Right.
Or, right? Because that's going to make me smarter, right? So a few times when I talked about different opportunities, who I call you? You're in it. I don't know anything, right? I didn't. Yeah. So I'm going to pick up the phone, know somebody that does it. What's it like? Do you really like it? Is this good? All right, yeah, you're right. Okay, what I was thinking maybe was true, but 2 or 3 times I know what I was thinking. You were like, dude, look at it like this, right? So that's the way it goes. And so, look, dude, I know this Rutgers game is huge. I can tell you.
They're all big.
No. Look, the fighting Noah Vedrils is huge, okay? If Noah Vedril comes out there with one leg and come out there like Peg Leg Peter and does work, I can promise this offseason is going to be horrible. I'm not even going to want to do anything.
Yeah,
I might just tell you guys, you know what? I got to be remote because I can't even – I'll be having a whole hour to think of Noah Vedril. The fight in Noah Vedrils, because we'd be passing his crib now. Right on the Highway 80, right? I'm just telling you, right? If we lose to the fighting Noah Vedrils against Rutgers, that was like COVID Central over there, where they were just like, okay, everybody in the Big Ten, they almost were like, we can't play.
Yeah, listen, they had the worst of all of these teams, right?
From start to finish. Now they're in finals, right?
Yeah.
And then Greg Schiano got there. He didn't have any practice, and I think he met with his team for like a week. Like, hey man, what's your name?
Yeah.
Okay. By the next time I see you in a month, I will have your name. Right there, I was still wearing name tags in week 4. Okay, so this is a huge game because might be the last game, and your last in memory is the one that lasts the longest. And we talked about this. If Nebraska could beat Purdue, Minnesota, this game, crossover game, and then I guess ideally when we were going, Minnesota and Nebraska were fighting for the Mayo Bowl, right?
The actual Mayo Bowl, yeah.
The actual Mayo. And then if you got to win your bowl game, you go and you end up like 4-4, 5-4, and you kind of
the opportunity was there.
The opportunity was there. Okay, now that's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Now reality has set in.
But
and
now you have to figure
out.
But now you also are you're playing for pride.
You've been playing for pride all season.
Well, you have, but now pride is always there. But you also now it's usually a bunch of other stuff there too. Now it's not. It's just pride because you don't
pride.
Yeah, but the thing is too, it's already ugly out there. You don't want to make it worse. And to me, you also want to, even if you just think of it selfishly as a player, as a coach, whoever, like you just want to have some more good tape so that when we go into the offseason program and we're about to all sit in the office and kind of go over what happened over the season, I want something else good that my position coach can look at. Because we can't go out on the same trajectory starting from this last game against Minnesota, because then you end up in a situation where it feels like everything you did during the season was wrong. Right? Like you just it's tough.
Ideally,
man.
you'd like to win. You'd like to go into this season or this last. You want to win this game. You want to win. Ideally, like a 30-17. I mean, I would like to be like 40-17. Nebraska's just not a 40-point team unless Rutgers just lays an egg.
No, it would be hard to see that.
Right. So you want to be like you want to win, right? And you want to play well.
Just win.
But you want to play well and win because it's good teaching tape because you're always going to refer back to that, right? Yeah, I didn't play good against Minnesota, but I actually bounced back, and this is what I can work on. Because then you could take the Ohio State tape, you can take the Northwestern tape, and kind of do the cut-up. And then when we sit in here, if I was a coach, we're going to go through all your tape, and then I'm going to take what you need to work on and get better at, send it down to the weight coach and off-season program, and then check in with you, and then we're going to build from there. You got to have that. But if you come out there and uninspired on the road in New Jersey, which Rutgers is not. I think it's between Illinois, Purdue. I would say Indiana and Rutgers. I don't know if there's 4 worse road games to go on.
Yeah, those are pretty terrible.
Right.
There's actually even
though you're in Rutgers, you can see the city, but you're in the swamp.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it. It's in the distance. You waving to it, but you're not close. In this particular case, you in and out going back home.
And it's cold.
So
it's going to be cold.
Yeah.
And you're playing at 3:00 in the afternoon.
I mean, Friday afternoon football, like we.
What? You know what happened? You know what? That's like a Seacrest in Lincoln.
I mean,
basically, we got out of school early. Okay?
Yeah,
we're getting out of school early, and we're playing at Lincoln Seacrest. So now it's like Lincoln High against North Star.
Seacrest might be nicer than Rutgers. Seacrest is a nice little field.
It's a nice field.
It's a nice little field, man. We'll see.
But you know what's funny though? As much as we just talked about, and we've been talking about for weeks, it's like a bad movie, and I'm still gonna watch it.
Oh yeah, we gotta. We're still gonna go check it out.
It's like I'm addicted to it, and I'm just hoping there's one time it just turns out different.
I mean,
it's like one of those movies that have different endings. You
when you watch it, got the special DVD edition.
We just ain't got past another one. We ain't got the number 2 yet.
They're locked right now. Like
locked.
It's grayed out when something is messing up with your thing. Yeah,
the Wi-Fi not working.
Yeah,
right?
it's not working. No, but I would say it's going to be okay. But I'm just going to say we'll see. Now, real quick, we do have an important week. I can't let it go without saying this. Because like I said earlier, we do have National Signing Day coming up. It feels weird for a number of reasons. One, just because Nebraska is still playing at the time that you have National Signing Day. But then also because you didn't have kind of those cues during the season where you have official visits, then you have the in-homes from coaches and all of that. Like all of it has just been strange. But it's a great moment for all of the kids that are going to sign, whether it's scholarship guys or walk-on. Everybody will want to talk about Thomas Fedoni coming out of this. Nebraska's by far and away, I guess, best signee. That will happen in a couple of days. This will come out on Tuesday. So the next day on Wednesday, he'll be signing. That is great news for Nebraska. And hopefully it works out for him and the whole rest of the kids that come into the class. But right now it feels like everything though is about what's happening with the team on Saturdays as a result of what's happening with the team Monday through Friday or Sunday through Friday, because they do walk through.
That's the only guesstimation. I know I'm not at practice. I don't really do the whole insider thing. I just know from experience. I went out and played and laid eggs. You know what I mean? And I had to go back and there's a year in the NFL. I felt like I didn't play well. I was lying. I lied to myself though for 16 weeks.
Right.
Okay. Oh, it'll get better. I'll get it together. What I had to realize is I changed my way I worked during the week and had to get back to what I knew best. Like you said, you got to get back, back to
on the habits.
And it changed around.
That's how you get it done.
Right. But I didn't run myself into a brick wall. I scaled that bad boy and went around.
See, he's Spider-Man out here.
Hey, dude. I already had enough concussions. I don't need to do any anymore, right? I don't knock myself out.
There you go. But that's going to actually do it for us this week. We're going to not put them on blast, which is our favorite segment of the week, because we basically put everybody on blast throughout this entire episode. So subscribe to the podcast everywhere you can listen to it. Rate us, review us, leave us 5-star review. If you leave 4, I am inclined to think you're a hater. You don't want that. Make sure you're checking out the other podcasts on the Hail Varsity Network, the Mind Your Own podcast, Varsity Club, More to It, and the Hail Varsity Radio Show. You can also email us at straightupbreakdown@hailvarsity.com, and you can find us on Twitter at GregSmithHB and at Foreman5644. We will catch you next time.